What up, guys? We're about to roll into the cold intro, and I know that you see the timestamp on this video. It's a long one, but I swear this is probably one of the best ones. So you should stick around, sit down, play some music or whatever in the background, and enjoy this amazing little guide into the mind of a great artist.
It's worth it.
Like, some people just painted paintings because they wanted to paint it, and they thought it was cool, and they just were like, yeah, I want to use this color because I think this red is sick. And then you're in like an art theory class, like, 100 years after the guy painted it, and they're like, well, he really used red because of, family trauma from when he was 6, and
How do you
they
know?
were wearing a red hat at the time. You're like, dude, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, definitely. Especially in, like, literature too. They do that a lot. Just over explaining everything. It's like maybe he just wanted to make something cool, and I feel like, even with our short films and stuff, like our little sketches and things like that, it's like we'll do something, we'll shoot it, and we had no idea what we were doing when we made it, and then we'll get to the edit and like, oh, that's really cool how that wraps back around. It's like we had no
it was not planned at all.
Yeah, it's like it takes on its own. It is
just like this podcast. Let's go ahead and play the intro.
Intro time.
Dope.
I think that's maybe the longest cold opener we've had, but I think it's probably the best one too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Send it.
That's our motto. Just send it.
Just send it.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought our motto was good enough.
I don't like
enough.
that motto.
Just passing.
Yeah, I think
my
it's
goodness.
both. I think
Average.
it's good enough.
By
Just
the
send it.
Seat of our pants.
All right.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy,
It's Cole
Cole
Ankney.
Ankney.
No.
It's your boy, Cole Ankney. It's me,
I'm here,
Tristan.
but-
It's Tristan.
It's you,
It's
David.
me, David.
Hi,
And
David.
The whole TRIFLIX crew's here with Nick from Nick Abstract.
Woo,
What up, what
Nick
up, what up?
Abstract. So you guys, you tuning in. You come check it out. You come back every week for the great conversations and bad conversations.
We hope so.
It's a bunch of bing bongs, bunch of crazy people out of Columbus, Indiana, hosting the best podcast in the best town. That's what we do.
That's what it is.
So what qualifies us to host a podcast? Well, we got a bunch of equipment because we run a media company, and we're really good at that too. And when we have some free time, we like to we like to chat
Like
it
to
up.
talk.
We like to talk a little too much, and then we bring in some people, and then we take some time to listen. So today we have a special guest that we'll be listening to, Mr. Abstract.
What up,
Mr.
what up?
Abstract.
Mr. Abstract.
I wish that was my actual last name, but
That
it's
would
not.
be tight.
I don't know.
Smith is my last name. Super
Yeah.
unoriginal.
I do have a story for you, real
Hit me.
quick. I was putting together your outline, and we had talked about numbers and stuff, and I was like, I almost guarantee you he is in my phone. I'm like, we've had this conversation before. But everything online said Nick Abstract, and I could not remember your last name for the life of me. And so we were like sitting there, I go, it's something really generic. I need your help. And first thing out of his mouth, he goes, Smith? And I was like, no, wait, I think you're right. And he was.
It was funny. It was like the movie Ted. I just started rattling off a bunch of basic white guy
Generic
names.
Latin.
Yeah, I was like Smith, Jones, James, Johnson, Black. What was it?
Brown.
Baker, Brown,
Yeah.
Black. It's like, and first try.
Yeah, on my dad's side of the family, where the name comes from, I legitimately have, like, when you're on a type form and it just says, like, you're supposed to type your name and it has, like, John Smith.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my uncle. Joe Smith, that's my uncle.
Oh, yeah.
Jane Smith, that's my aunt.
Yeah.
Like, they checked all the
Wow.
boxes. My
my
grandparents
gosh.
weren't, super original with, naming per se, but
That's okay, because it could have been worse.
Were you
it
serious
could, yeah.
about being Irish?
Say what?
Are you really Irish? Like, do you?
Yeah, yeah.
And your brother's name's Patrick?
Yep. My brother's name's Patrick.
I caught that, and I was like, I don't know. It's kind of mean, but it's kind of funny too.
I don't know. It just seems like his family leans into that type of stuff
Yeah.
with the
I
names.
dig
It's
it.
named after Catholic saints. That's what my parents named me for. Saint Nicholas, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense.
Saint Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Whitechapel.
Yeah, how we ended up there, I'm not sure.
It all ties together. Makes sense now.
Mom still doesn't know they're not Christian band.
No, I told her the story 1,000 times.
Don't you love that, being able to tell the stories now
Yeah.
and kind of just be like, this is what really happened.
Can't ground me
Love ya.
anymore.
Yeah,
Bye.
right. Yeah, it's funny, like, where people end up from like, their initial interests or, I guess just from my brother giving me those MP3 players, it's like now I'm, still going to shows to see weird niche bands that no one's ever even heard of or even cares about.
Yeah.
It's just, who knows, where you're going to take an influence and what you're going to go from there.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of initial influence, so Nick is an artist. That's the best way to put it. But he, what I'm curious about is kind of what was the road that kind of led you to where you are now.
And what kind of art do you do now?
Yeah.
That's pretty broad.
No, I know. I figured we'd get there, but kind of maybe some context because I only know so much of the history. So was it always the thing that you set out to do, or is this something that just kind of evolved over time?
Good question. I've always been interested in like being creative. Like ever since I was a little kid, I was always sketching stuff or drawing things. I don't really know why. My grandma on my mom's side, she was always doing like Christmas paintings, and she took lessons with this lady named Donna, and she's like this OG painter from Irvington, Indiana.
Okay.
And so my mom and her siblings all took lessons from Donna as well, and so art sort of was peripherally, in the framework in my mom's side of the family. On my dad's side, they're more like engineering background-esque. So they're like, I don't know if analytical is the word, but a lot of them are like, I don't know, not a whole lot of artists per se over there. There's a few.
Pragmatic.
Yeah,
Like that.
Definitely.
Yeah. We have an engineer right here. So.
Yeah, and my dad was a
get that.
mechanic growing up, and so he always has like this willingness to look at a problem and try to find like a solution to resolve that issue or a part or some sort of he's a very engineering minded guy. And my mom, when I was a little kid, was a cake baker for St. Elmo's restaurant downtown Indy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like I'd come home from school and she's got like cakes, and she also did wedding cakes too. So she's got these massive cakes like stacked to the ceiling that she's hand pumping all the icing and like the pattern work, and like she
That's
did
cool.
one that was sick that had like it was like a it wasn't resin, but it's kind of like that clear resin stuff that people put on paintings.
Oh.
But she made it look like water that was like spilling over one of the cakes, and like it went down the cake at the top had the waterfall and it continued onto the other. I mean, it was crazy.
That's cool.
She went super into it. And so it was cool as a kid just seeing my mom create, wild cakes for different clients. And so, yeah, that was interesting. And seeing my grandma, who was a painter, I just kind of always had it in me. And, ever since I was a little kid, every time I had a homework assignment, I'm always sketching, doodling on like the blank negative space under the math problems.
Oh, yeah.
I never really did the math problems. I was like, this blank space is more fun. So we'll hang around here.
That's cool. I did a lot of that too.
And so as a kid, I ended up going with my grandma to have art lessons with Donna. So this lady Donna has just been a fixture in the art family for like a long time. Mm-hmm. And so also being colorblind, which I am, Donna helped me put together color schemes for certain paintings, or say, that purple doesn't really make sense there. Let's, shift that a little bit towards the blue range. And so I started to get like practices in color theory kind of at an early age.
Okay. Well, I know if you don't mind, I know there's different types of color blindness. Mm-hmm. So maybe explain kind of what it is you can see and maybe the things that you can't.
Yeah, definitely. So the way I like to describe it is, I think there's people that are yellow-blue colorblind. I could be wrong, but that sounds wild to me. Like if you look up at the sky, it's yellow instead of. I don't know. I think I've just done some cursory research into color blindness. I'm not 100% sure on what else is out there.
Okay.
But I think color blindness as a term is sort of like people just think, oh well, he just sees black and white, but it's not really like that.
Yeah, I'll be honest, that's what I imagine.
Yeah, it's more like it's more color deficient, I would say.
Okay.
So imagine, let's say you're picking out colors for the interior of like a living room. Okay, you go to the paint store. The paint store has a bunch of paints that are like gray, but they have a tint of beige. So this is where you hear terms like grayish or gray blue, like things that are in that range where like really most people be like, yeah, it's just like a a cool gray or like a warm gray or something like that. But those have a base hue in that it's beige or tan or has an orange or yellowish hue. For people like me that are colorblind, stuff that's gray that has barely another color is just straight up gray.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically you're taking the whole color spectrum and desaturating most of the colors. So when you do that, you're pushing the colors that most people, like let's say I painted my room a grayish and I ask you, hey, what's the base color of that? You'd say, yeah, it looks kind of maybe tan gray. But to me, there'd be no way I could trace back that it was tan. Like it's just base gray.
Okay.
So colors that are real nuanced just get pushed to gray. But I can still see, bright yellow, bright blue, like things that are on the far end of that color spectrum, I can still see pretty well. They're probably desaturated from what you guys see, but I can still see them.
Okay.
Do you know where that, I'm just curious, do you know where that, comes from? Like, what can cause that in somebody?
I think people are just born with it.
Okay.
It runs a lot in my mom's side of the family, actually. So my grandpa,
Okay.
That's the Irish side too.
Yeah.
So my grandpa Ritzy was colorblind. My uncle Brian is colorblind. My aunt Shirley's colorblind. I'm colorblind. I think my cousin Will's colorblind. So it's just and what's also weird is most of the colorblind people in the family are also artists. And the people that aren't colorblind aren't artists necessarily.
That's wild.
It's weird.
Yeah, I've looked into optical evolution and where that comes from. It's obviously to see red is ripe fruit and green, and you the eye's ability to determine blue is pretty low because there's not a whole lot of blue in the world other than the sky and water. There's not a lot of blue. So to me, it's really interesting to maybe it's just a regional thing, and that area just that group just doesn't. There wasn't as much of a need to see color as the rest of the world. Maybe it's just kind of like a trait or something. I don't know anything about it, but it's really fascinating to me that, it's something that can help you see the world differently. But you're still an artist, so clearly it's not
right.
It may set you back in some ways, but I feel as an artist, you see things from a whole new perspective that other people just can't.
100%. I definitely was drawn to composition and kind of photography really early on because those are things that rely on a different set of principles. You're not relying on the saturation of the color interplaying with other colors. It's more of if the composition looks good, it could be shot in black and white and it still look dope.
Yep.
So very quickly early on when I got my first DSLR camera and started shooting, I'm okay, I'm liking some of the leading lines, that stuff that I really was drawn to when I first started shooting. This was kind of before I ever even painted anything. I was just shooting pictures all the time, and I was man, architecture is pretty cool. And I like how, if you're just standing next to a rectangular building, you just think of it in 3D space as, okay, it's just a rectangle. But if you walk up next to the building and look up, all of a sudden you're getting these crazy sharp angles and I don't know, the way that light is hitting a roof will cast a sharp shadow that otherwise wouldn't be there. So it's just through the lens of photography, you're looking at a very dynamic space with lines. And that definitely kind of informs my art practice, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, knowing what your work looks like and hearing the influence, it lines up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So do you have if I'm sure there's probably some points where maybe in your head it looks different. Is there a way that you get feedback or anything or bounce ideas before you send things off or even choose color palettes?
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of a funny story actually. So basically what you're talking about is kind of how I'm confident in doing anything with color, given that I have this deficiency with it. And so a funny story, I've probably beaten this story down to everyone I know. But if you guys haven't heard, I'll share it with you.
I don't think so.
I definitely haven't.
Word. So basically, in art school, I was a graphic design major, so I wasn't really doing so much with mixing colors and mixing paints. I was working on the computer mostly. And so in our color theory class, which is a semester-long course strictly about color, which being a colorblind guy, I walk into that classroom it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And so the first day of class, we take a color survey. Our professor was just kind of wanting to know what students can perceive, those subtleties, those grays that I was talking about before. What's our color perception range? And so it was like this online form that had a bunch of squares, and all the squares were different colors, and they were out of order. So like, let's say you have blue and yellow. It's a bunch of blue and yellow, but they're all scrambled. And so you just use the mouse to click the blue, drag it to the other side. And your goal is to make a smooth gradation from blue to yellow.
I've played a game just like this. Yeah. I had it on my phone for like a month, and I was like, okay, I'm bored.
Yeah, it was pretty quick, this little assignment. And so after the blue and yellow, you go to red, green, which I struggled on. And then you go to like purple, red, and it's just a wide range. And then black and white, I think, is at the bottom. And when you're done, you hit submit. And the goal, it's kind of like golf. The more things you get wrong, the higher your score is. So you're aiming for like the lowest score.
Okay.
You know, so people are finishing the quiz and they're like, oh, I got a 4, meaning like, oh, I only got like 4 of them wrong or whatever. A couple people are like, oh, I got 30, and another kid's like, oh, I got a 26.
20. That's pretty.
Dude, I'm still working over there when they're like, oh, I'm done. So like time passes by.
Sweating.
Some other kid's like, oh, I got a 42, and everybody's like, oh, 42. Like, man, that sucks. Like, it's terrible. And then I hit submit, and I'm like, I got 132. My professor was like, what? Everyone's like, dude, no one scored that low on this.
He's like, all right, that's the class clown for the year. All right, let me see it. You're like,
Mr. 132.
I know, dude.
You're like, no, I really couldn't. I'm trying my best.
I did. Yeah, it looked like I didn't even like try, but I legitimately tried.
You probably could have had a higher score if you just threw it.
If I had more time.
Yeah, right.
And so my professor came over to me after that and was like, look, you're going to struggle in this class if we don't, figure something out. So she gave me 3 textbooks to look up at the library, strictly about the history of color theory, the way color affects people's perception. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the books, but I went deep and I read them. I spent a couple weeks doing some like color research and color history, just cursory stuff on the internet, learning about, what's the history of the color blue? I think you alluded to that recently when you were like, yeah, people didn't really perceive blue that well for a long chunk of history, right? Why is that? What's the history of the color red? Why is red associated with like dominance and power? Well, red was, I could be wrong on this. I'm regurgitating information from like 8 years ago. But essentially it was hard to mine the color red because you needed like a certain, I think that's why it's called cadmium. You needed a certain type of like clay rock that would be like mashed down into a fine powder, then mixed with a liquid that would then become the pigment that people would use. So like some of the ancient cave paintings were like, cadmium smashed rocks that they would like, have you seen the handprint on the wall? Yep. Yeah, so it's like, I guess red was really difficult to like manufacture in bulk. And so paintings that were done with red were established with like status and things like that. So yeah, just learning that stuff was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Who would have thought,
Yeah. And don't they say, I think red is still the hardest color to produce or something along those lines. I know that there's still one of those.
I've heard a lot about it with like makeup. Like a lot of like the sources for like red makeup are really weird, like from bugs and things, because that's like the easiest source to find the pigment red, which sounds super disgusting. I know. And that's why people got so weirded out about it. It's like, I don't want to put bugs on my lips. Like, I might eat
crazy.
That. Yeah,
they just don't tell you.
Yeah.
Natural sources.
But the whole color behind it too is like, because like that's food, that's blood, that's like things that like humans had to learn to see. I know. But then like also like makeup, like the reason you put red on the face is like that's arousal, and like that's what draws people. That's what like humans are conditioned to like. The color red is very important, and then on top of that, it's hard to produce. So it's like it's already important to us visually, and like everybody. I don't know if that's an uncommon one. Like red, like if you saw a bright red, does that still stand out to you, or does that blend in with like a bright green?
Good question. So it's kind of like, so when you think of color, and this is what they taught very early on in color theory, and especially in some of the books I was reading, really color is a descriptor of 3 different elements. There's the hue, which hue is dictated by, most people when they say color think you're talking about hue. Hue is really just like that little slider in Illustrator on the side that's like red, yellow, orange, blue. You know, you kind of slide that around. But those aren't really the bases of a color. A color really refers to its hue, its value, and its saturation. So like if we're looking at like his water bottle right here, I think this is blue, but this could also be purple, and I'd have really no way of determining that. But as you can see, it's kind of like it's kind of a dark blue because white is contrasting off of it. I don't know if the camera can see this water bottle.
Yeah, there you're good.
But it's relatively dark, but the blue isn't like a royal blue. It's like a saturated blue. So the color, the saturation's like punched up super duper high.
Yeah.
And so when you're dealing with color and you're thinking of, you know, saturation, hue, and value differentiates how the amount of lightness that color is within.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So a lot of people sometimes get value confused with saturation, because saturation is just the intensity of that color within it. So really, if you're talking about, let's say, coral as a color, okay, coral isn't orange. It's also not pink, which is also not red. Coral's also not extremely saturated either. So now you're dealing with like trying to pin out where coral is in like this vertice of these three different elements. So that's really what defines a color. So navy blue is really low in value, but it's really saturated in the amount of blue in it, and its hue is blue. You know, so once I started thinking of color kind of in this way, it allowed me to think of like, oh, well, you know, if I'm stacking this color over this color, there's not going to be enough contrast if I'm not watching the saturation here. You know, if you put something real saturated over something that's really gray, there's going to be more pop. And so constantly dealing in those in graphic design, I mean, you could design something when I was in school in graphic design, like you can make something that typographically, the fonts and everything, the layout, all spot on, looks great. But if your contrast and your values are wrong of the colors and hues you're using, it's going to look terrible.
Yeah.
So like just dealing and making a lot of mistakes in that too, you start to kind of have like default go-tos of colors that, oh, well, this, you know, this color scheme is going to work, or like, you know, I can go this way because I've done this method before and I know it's visually, you know, read smooth. The colors aren't, you know, you can also, have you heard of simultaneous contrast?
No.
So it's this weird thing where like just a color stacked on top of another color will affect your perception of that color. Like, have you ever seen, like, if you're driving along like a street, sometimes it's like really cruddy gas stations will just have like a sign that says like, you know, gas mart or something, but it's like a really saturated blue background and it's kind of a low value color. And then they also have a really saturated orange that's right on top of it. And like when you look at it, it just like vibrates. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. Actually, our door did that whenever we got the stickers put on here, because the doors in here are like a orange brown. Like it has a very orange tint to the wood brown, and then our logo is a very saturated orange. So whenever you see that next to the very saturated blue and the saturated red, I don't remember which color it is, but I swear it started vibrating. Yeah. And I didn't know there's like actually an explanation for that or some study around it. That's awesome.
Yeah, simultaneous contrast. It's real weird.
Yeah.
And it's strange too. So if you take that phenomena of, you said it was orange, the door, and your logo was blue on top of it?
Yeah.
So if you flip that the other way too and had a blue door and an orange logo on top, the same principle would happen in reverse too.
Okay.
And so if you put those next to one another, so that pairing, like if you took a photo of the blue logo on the orange door or the orange door with the blue logo and you put them next to one another, the logos are going to look different than the orange on the other side.
Yeah.
Like I know it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like basically just because it's behind the opposite type of color, it actually makes the color look brighter than it really is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The oranges wouldn't even look like they're the same orange. It's weird.
Dang.
Yeah, there's a lot of optical illusions I've seen posted online. There's a YouTube channel. It's fairly popular now called Vsauce.
I follow
Vsauce on Twitter.
Fairly popular.
Yeah, and I love his videos. His videos
He
are
crushes
awesome.
it.
But on Twitter, he posts those types of things all the time with like optical illusions. Like, hey, this is yellow, but between red and green, and it doesn't look like yellow anymore. And then you zoom it out, and it's so small, and it becomes different.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This podcast is going to have to be like our training video for color theory. Holy
Yeah, there you
moly,
go.
dude.
Well, I mean, it is something like when we have time, it's something we're supposed to do with like composition. Like if you're shooting a film or whatever, and you go to a frame of it, and you have this subject, like a person or an animal or something, and then you have this background, and it looks really pretty, and then you remove all the saturation, so it's just black and white, and you're like, oh, this looks terrible. You know, it breaks down like at the bare fundamentals. Was your shot good?
Yeah.
Because without all the color and without all of the extra things, just from a composition, from a framing perspective, does it look good? And that's where you try to get that contrast of, let's make the background darker, make the subject brighter, or vice versa. Or a good example I think everybody probably knows is like the I Spy books. You know, everything is very similar in contrast of how bright and dark it is, and it's just scattered all over, and it forces your eyes just start searching for something to focus on, and you're like, I can't find what I'm supposed to be looking for. And in filmmaking, at least, you want people like, oh, that's the thing. And unless you don't, right? And then you're like, you want it to be very intentional. You want them to search around and try to find something, and then you reveal it to them. And you, like, it's a fundamental tool that you should know how to use and when to enable and disable it, kind of thing.
Definitely.
I don't know if you have much of a thought of that, like whenever you're designing, if you put like focal pieces in your art, or I know abstract's probably maybe a little different too.
Well, it's funny when you're talking about, when you're looking at your overall composition, it needing to look good in black and white. I come from like a graffiti painting background. And so like through graffiti, when you're painting different color schemes and you're, you know, okay, let's put a key lime outline on this like navy blue fill-in, like you're just playing around with all these different tones, and sometimes you'll paint color schemes that just like do not work out. And so like very early on, I kind of had a buddy of mine that I was painting with at the time. You know, we sort of started thinking of graffiti schemes in this sense of like, let's just make sure that the value of these colors aren't like clashing. So we're not having things like simultaneous contrast affecting, you know, the way that the piece is going to look when it's all said and done. So we kind of came up with this idea of, after you paint the piece, take a picture of it, put that in grayscale, and just make sure that, you know, you can actually tell what's going on in the piece. So we kind of came up with the term, it should bang in black and white. First.
That's awesome.
If it bangs in black and white, then it'll snap in color for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Graffiti.
No, I see that used all the time. The grayscale test, especially with like going to websites. That's a huge thing, because like you need people to be able to figure out where things are. I think you showed it to me in video and makes sense in photo. I've seen artists like train just like, I'm going to paint just something grayscale first. And then, like, if it's Illustrator, then you can just go in and just select and just recolor it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And people who design websites, too, like, they're laying stuff out in, like, a gray framework, and then the colors and polish will add later.
Yeah.
Or, like, the user interface on, like, any software. It's like, do you want to save bright blue, bright green? Yes. And everything else is, like, very...
Cancel is just
monochromatic, gray, faded out, and you're like, that's probably the thing I should do.
Right.
Whatever. You're like bright blue button. Cancel.
ADD kicks in and like, I see a color.
That's why when you see a website from like, you know, early 2000s, you're like, yo, why does this look early 2000s? It's because they're like, yo, make the freaking make the button neon yellow, and it's like, dude, it doesn't need to be that color. It's kind of unnecessary.
People will still click on it.
Right.
You don't have a trailing mouse.
Man.
I wanted to ask if you can say, I don't know if you can or can't, what was maybe one of the crazier spots that you ended up doing a graffiti piece?
A graffiti piece at a crazy spot.
Yeah, because I mean, that's kind of I had a friend in college, did a video with him and stuff, and like watched him and his buddy like go do graffiti work, and was always super interested in it. Like, I don't have the talent for it, but it was always very interesting. But I know that like you have to find a spot usually, and it's not exactly something that's like. I called
Sanctioned.
the city and asked,
Right. Well, when you say a crazy spot, like what do you define crazy as?
Well, you know, I mean, it's like sometimes you're driving. I want to say that there was one like on a bridge over 65 one time, you know, and I'm just like,
how did they get there?
How did you do that? Yeah. When did you do that? And like, how did you get away with it? You know, and like sometimes you see the one that's like up on the billboard, you know, off the side
People
of the highway.
Are crazy.
And you're like, what?
It's almost magic.
Everybody paints alleys now. Like, I mean, train cars, lame. Like, what's your crazy story?
Man, I never got too crazy with it. There was I have a friend that's like an urban explorer guy who finds all these like cool buildings and abandoned places. His name is Mac. Shout out Mac. And he found a tunnel that goes all the way underneath Indianapolis. So it basically starts at kind of around where the Lucas Oil football stadium is.
Okay.
And it goes all the way under the city for like miles and miles. And then it spits out on the east side near New York Street.
Okay.
And so he like found this tunnel down there.
That's cool.
There's actually a lot of really old classic graffiti from the 90s that's on the west side entrance. But the east side entrance, like people hadn't ever really painted there. And so that was kind of one of the first spots that I was like, dang, this is like definitely something pretty cool and special here. That spot now is completely ragged. It's like everyone and their stepmom has painted it. You know, it's kind of gone downhill a little bit, but it was definitely a cool experience being in this like weird underground tunnel that like, I don't know. That's something that I appreciate about graffiti is like you get to watch the world kind of pass by from like an observer standpoint. You know, we're literally under New York Street. I've driven over New York Street thousands and thousands of times.
Yeah.
And like the thought never crossed my mind that there's some dudes with spray cans like under my feet or like under my car, you know, trying to create something. So
that's tight.
It's cool, that like observer effect. I remember I was exploring this building one time with Mac, probably 2012. And we're just on this rooftop of this abandoned building, just like watching some lady just like driving down the street. Like we weren't specifically watching her. We're just like observing, you know, the streets around, and like some lady was probably taking her kid to like soccer practice or something. And it's like, dude, she has no idea there's just some guy up on some building just watching, you know.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool to just see that, you know, we're all kind of in this little Sims interactive game, you know, and I'm kind of watching a Sims player just kind of roam down the road on autopilot. So it's cool to have that like break from autopilot.
Yeah.
That really humbled me.
Dude, I've always wanted to do that.
Urban Explorer?
Yes, because
definitely, man.
I am a still photographer, and landscapes, I love just, I mean, from shooting houses and doing all the things that I've done, I enjoy landscape more than anything, you know, buildings and sunsets and, you know, all the stuff that everybody likes. But there's a couple people, there's at least one person that I've followed on Instagram for a long time, and I know they're in Indy, and it might be the same person, that does some of that sort of stuff where they're up there and you get pictures of your feet dangling off buildings.
Do you know their name?
I'd have to look at it, and maybe we could do that afterwards. I'll have to look at it and see if I can remember who it is. But I know all of our paths have crossed somehow, so there's a possibility it's probably your buddy. But
I've got
that'd be cool.
Two of my buddies that were really, really into like the roof-topping scene. So like there's the urban explorers that just go to like rough, abandoned spaces, and then there's like the roof-toppers that they would just, you know, watch security and find ladders and like find any way to just get on top of crazy buildings. Yeah. And like, so my buddy Ian and my buddy Dawson actually were kind of like maybe the third or second wave of these kind of rooftop explorer guys.
Okay.
And they got on top of the Chase Tower, which is now the Salesforce Tower.
Yeah.
But like they have
Holy
a photo
crap.
of them like sitting on the Chase logo. Like, and his caption was just like, "What's up, Indy?" Like, just a crazy caption, you know. And like, it ended up kind of blowing up in their face. You know, I think there was a newspaper that was written about them, and security, of course, like, you know, tightened up. As you would imagine, you can't just have people walking on your bank's building. That's not
right.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
So it was weird to like observe that phenomena. But some of the pictures that they get from that, like, yeah, they're doing something that's not sanctioned, not approved, not really, not
Legal.
really, not really legal.
Slightly dangerous.
But some of the photos that came from it are just stunning.
Oh, I
like,
bet.
There's a reason that like their photographs on Instagram were just like my buddy Cheech was featured on like, when Instagram had like a featured page, like his post would just get on the featured, and like he's just some random kid from Indiana who has like hundreds of thousands of people who are just seeing all these crazy cool photos he was posting, because like it was a unique perspective to the city that people are used to, and
Yeah.
That name sounds familiar.
Cheech, yeah, that's Ian.
Okay.
I think me and Cade had a class with him.
And there's a
That may be
there's-
how you knew him.
There's probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I was busy having kids, and I was like, I want to climb on buildings.
I mean, talking about the architecture of like cities and stuff, and just like if you think about like abandoned mines, right? Like somebody had the infrastructure, they tunnel out mines, and then when they're done, they put like a door up out front that says "Don't enter," right? So all this infrastructure and all this time and money goes into it, and the same thing happens as technology evolves and cities grow. So you have all these underground old subways because we don't use them anymore. We have old electrical routes and stuff. And if you're lucky, I watched some of these people on YouTube where they'll find or come in contact with people that acquired the old original 1920s or earlier maps of city infrastructure that are no longer, like there's tunnel systems that are no longer visible on maps. And you'll see this sometimes like with Google Maps where infrastructure changes, a road's no longer there or a new road's there, whatever. So they have these old maps of tunnel systems that you couldn't find otherwise.
That's so dope.
And then like that tunnel there, that 2-mile tunnel may not show up on a map in 2020 plus moving forward, but at some point somebody designed that tunnel, somebody dug it out. That was a multi-$100,000 project for the city, I'm sure. So that's on somebody's map somewhere. And it's so cool whenever you can like go to
learn
a
about
city.
the city.
Yeah. Like this is how people live. This is how people got by. And it's just nobody knows. And it's just completely buried under 8+ feet of rubble and like complete like change. I mean, like cities like Rome and stuff, like places that got demolished, or France, and you have the catacombs. They have entire cities. Mount Vesuvius, is that Rome?
I don't know.
Okay. Mount Vesuvius, you have a volcano go off, and underneath the volcano rubble is an entire city.
Yeah.
And it's so cool whenever you can like find that history and just like experience the city from a place that people used to. But
that's what it's all about for me. Like it's a way to interface with the city beyond just a surface level.
Yeah.
You get to see things from a perspective that like you have to work for. You have to like, scope it out. You have to have a friend who's been there who can show you, how to do it and whatnot. And, there's a reason that there's documentaries on like Pripyat, which is where like the Chernobyl event happened.
Yeah.
Like, there's documentaries on like, I guess Pripyat, which is the city that was near there. And sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but now like people go and explore there, and like there's photographs taken in these old buildings that like people haven't been in for a long, long time.
yeah.
And I just think it's very human to just see a place and just like wonder about it. Like when you drive through and you go to the mall, go to the store, come back home, like you're just interacting with a few small touch points of your local area. So when you can interact with the city on a level that's like completely different, that puts you in a completely different headspace. And, one that comes to mind for me, on the west side of Indianapolis, there was the Central State Insane Asylum.
Okay.
And it's off like, if you just take Washington Street outside of Indy,
Okay. Yeah.
and head west, it was at like Washington and Warman is the street that was there. And it was just this massive complex. It was a mental asylum that was there for a long time. It went abandoned in '94, I think. And so it's just this complex of like, there's probably 12 or 13 buildings that are just rotting away back behind a fence in like this whole area where all these people live,
Yeah.
And like a bunch of little kids that just like, had a baseball bat and like, they'd hit the ball and it'd go a little over the fence, they'd go get the ball and then be like, oh, well, now that I'm over here, let me just walk around. So like, I don't know, it just became this wild little touch point that's outside the city that people don't really know exists there. And when it closed down, I mean, people explored that place for years. I mean, there were like ghost hunt tours through the facility and stuff, and like it definitely gave a creepy vibe. That's the only, in terms of crazy places, that was the one place I drove by and just looking at it, I was like, yo, something inside me feels like, don't go in there.
Yeah.
You know, some stuff went down.
Yeah.
Like
who
that's the
knows?
thing.
Who
You
knows?
just
they dug up bodies in there when they tore the buildings down. Like people were just like left there.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to kill somebody, I would suggest it, but like they didn't find them until they tore the buildings down.
Yeah.
Holy
It reminds me
moly.
of the movie Sucker Punch. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's like it's somebody goes to an insane asylum and it's all dramatized and it's not based in reality at all. But like the movie is like it shows kind of some of the craziness that happens in there between misconduct, abuse, and then the people like trying to cope. So then like their mental state like will change, and like the movie keeps going in and out of the reality of somebody's mind, and like it's pretty
interesting.
nuts. And I don't know, just
dang.
those places are creepy.
Yeah, I
They're
think
creepy.
I think with the Indianapolis one, I could be wrong, but I think there was like some substantial medications that came out that actually helped relieve some of the mental patients that were there.
Okay.
It was one in particular. I can't recall what the name was. I think it starts with an A. But I think from the creation of that medicine and a bunch of others, like all of a sudden this massive facility, they're like, yeah, we don't really have that many people that need to be here anymore.
Oh.
So it just kind of fell into disarray. And now there's like a couple of the buildings. There was like a Central State mansion that's like right on the property that, you know, they tore a bunch of the more administrative and housing buildings down, but the mansion's still there. They converted it into like student housing for people who go to IUPUI, which is wild.
Holy
by the
moly.
way,
I
right next to the
bet.
surgical ward. Would not want to be living there. But like, it's really nice now. Like I have a buddy, Project One, Adam and Kyle. They do like really cool art installation stuff, and their headquarters is on Central State now, in where the like cafe hall used to be. They like build cool art there now, and like
That's tight.
They're killing it out there. There's a art fabricator, Ignition Arts, that does crazy cool art installations, and they have a huge like warehouse section out there. And it's wild to go to a place, let's say 2013, that was an absolute dump, that was just the creepiest, most vile looking place ever. And now it's like, yeah, come to our studio. And like, dude, I came here like 10 years ago when it was crazy looking, you know. And now it's like, there's even a wedding venue that I went to, like, I think I went to something the other day, like the other year, that like they had a graphic design like movie poster reveal party that was in there, and like
That's cool.
it's just wild to see that a place can transform that much. And yeah, it comes with a little bit of gentrification too, but
Right.
it's neat to experience a space prior to some of that too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea of like gentrification too is like, it sounds really nefarious, but I'm not diagnosed with OCD or anything, but it's like, to me, like anytime I see older buildings, it's like, there's so much potential here, and I want to bring order to like this chaos and like turn something, like you get like that artist side of like, I want to make something great, and there's so much potential here of like all the old school buildings or old factories that turn into like these, like that's the new style now. But
Yeah.
it's the new style because that's all artists could afford 30 years ago and out in LA or Chicago or whatever. And then those turn into the new art districts, and then the rich people come in because they want to be in the art area, and then the
It's a
artists
weird
can't
cycle.
afford it anymore, so the artists move to the Newport area, the new lower areas, and then they renovate those spots. And it's like that order from chaos is like just one of the coolest part to me about what architecture is, about what artistry is. It's like you have a blank canvas. There's so much potential, and it's like I'm going to bring order to it and make something great on it.
Definitely, man. It's really funny that you bring that up, actually, because my art studio that I have downtown Indy, I'll give you a very quick backstory. I hit up this apartment complex that was building this new development, and they're building it next to this relatively older building, and there was a wall that separated the two spaces. There's this big white wall. So I hit up the apartment place saying, hey, you know, if you're interested in a mural or something like that for the space as you're having new people move in, you know, I'd love to make something happen. And so the apartment place talked with the lady who owned the other building, and they kind of said, yeah, we'll pay one half, she'll pay the other half, and then we'll have you paint a mural on this building. So painted the mural. That was last year. And just out of curiosity, I asked the lady who owned the building, hey, what is on the other side of this wall? Because you know, when you paint a mural, you get to know the wall. Like, you guys are friends by the end of it. You know, I know every crack and crevice. I've smashed paint into every hole on the wall. So it's like, I just got to know what's on the other end of this thing. And she's like, well, you know, it used to be a restaurant, and then it was a check cashing place, and then a salon. But, you know, I haven't had a tenant in here in like 8 years. So it's just, it's really just in bad shape. But I can still show you in there. I was like, okay, word. And at the time, I was painting my canvases in my living room of my 1-bedroom apartment. And like I said, I come from a graffiti background. It's like, I can't use spray paint in my apartment.
Yeah.
I start, and all of a sudden my friggin' neighbors are like, yo, we can't breathe.
What are you doing there?
Oh, man.
And so I was looking for a space. And so she walks me into the building, and she's like, yeah, you know, it's kind of a mess. And it was a mess. I mean, there's no electricity. There's no heating. There's no AC. I mean, it's literally like, here's an abandoned building.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's awesome.
And so coming from the graffiti background and having, like you were talking about, this appreciation for a space like that, where others would be like, you know, it's too grimy, it's too cruddy. I was like, hey, I'm looking for a studio space. I really just need a wall to put my canvases on, and then a place to store some paints. Like, is that something you'd be open to? And she was like, 100%. So as of the last year, I have this studio space that, I mean, it looks like a bomb went off in there, but it's perfect for me. And it, you know, yeah, it'd be cool to have heat in the winter. You know, there's a gaping hole in the ceiling that snow falls through. And so in the winter, there's like a pile of snow in the studio that doesn't melt because it's that cold in there. So most of those canvases we were talking about before the show started, like, I painted those in like 20 degrees.
Okay. I was going to ask if that was the space that was the background.
Yeah,
in that
100%.
video. Okay.
The space looked awesome.
I was going to say, we were like, oh man, that looks great.
Yeah, it's real photographic. It's crazy. There's like
natural sunlight.
Yeah, like I said, no lights, no electricity. So I have these big windows that have like pieces of paper over them. So the lighting that does come through is actually really soft, which I like. It doesn't cast any hard shadows on the work as I'm painting it.
Dude, that'd be so tight to have somebody stand under the hole, and as the snow and the sun came through and take pictures. Like, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's
Just
weird.
in
Like,
a building with snow.
As I'm sitting there painting, I look over, I'm like, snow is really falling in this thing, huh? It's kind of weird.
Getting in touch with nature.
Yeah, I dream of having a nice, pristine, you know, white studio with AC and electricity, and I can bump my boombox and have fun in there. But for the time being, it's been a humbling and character building experience being in there.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere, right? I mean, we've talked about this, and it's so hard. You know, you watch all the accomplished, I think that's the best way to put it, the accomplished people online. We see it all, right? So, and it's always like, oh man, if only, you know, and I can't wait to get to that point. And so sometimes it's difficult to appreciate kind of where you're at, but you have to, you know, you got to start somewhere and do your stuff. And it's just cool that it came together the way that it did, and you got a good story out of it, and it came with its own sunroof.
Yeah, it's serendipitous the way that kind of works.
Yeah.
But it is really hard to appreciate like where you're currently at.
Oh yeah.
Even you guys with your business, like,
oh, it's incredible.
I'm sure, let's say 25 years from now, when you guys are just balling, you got a bunch of employees and you're just cranking out work, you're going to look back, man, remember when it was like just us?
Yeah.
And like,
for sure.
No,
but right now it's probably the hardest time too that you're working too. You're probably working harder than you've ever worked in your life doing this. But a
little bit.
You'll look at it and be like, I really appreciate that we did that.
Well, that's the thing is you're talking about the artists that are like, I don't know, they made it or whatever. Like they have studios, and you're talking about like losing that charm. And I was listening to a podcast to some artists, and they're like, we're up to, like, when it started out, it was like 4 of us in a studio. And they work out in LA, and it's 95 degrees outside, so it's 120 in the building. And it's like, we didn't have AC until 2 years ago. And it's like they had been working there for 8 years, and they're worried now that they're up to like 25 employees. Does it change the people coming in? Do they still experience the company the same way we do? Because they don't have that experience. So like, they don't have that maybe appreciation, or they didn't go through that grit of it. So like, you know, there's like the whole expression of like good times make weak men or something that, and weak men make bad times make great men or something. And then the cycle continues, and it's like, do you lose the charm of the company and like that camaraderie if like we're, you know, pull in some crazy money and we got a ton of employees and we got a huge space. It's like everybody that comes in, are they going to have the same experience in the company because they didn't have the same past?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know.
I would say
not
definitely
there.
no, but
There's no way. Yeah.
there's a way you could probably
Yeah.
curate their experience, and like if you share part of the story, maybe they'll take and carry forward like some of that experience. You know, like one thing I was thinking as you were talking about that was I went to Miami 2019 for Art Basel, and as we're just like walking around the city, you guys know Obey Shepherd Ferry?
No, that's a new name.
He
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
he did like the he has the clothing line that's just called Obey.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And then he has the hats that have like his color range is usually like red, black, and white kind of a thing.
Okay.
I'm sure you've seen it around.
Oh yeah, I had a couple.
Super duper well known artist, and he started in kind of street art and graffiti and stuff too. But he progressed his art practice to the level where like you said, he's got like a staff of people. You know, when he paints canvases, he probably does some of the design work and then like gives it to other people, and then other people paint it. So like when we were in Miami, he had probably 6 or 7 paintings in this gallery we went to. And like the paintings are, I would say like maybe 5 feet tall by 3 feet wide. Like they're decent sized paintings, but the price point on them were like $46,000
Oh my god.
for just like a painting on a canvas, which is like, I mean, dude, I get it. He's hustled. He's worked his tail off. He's done the early years like we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, dude, he probably didn't even paint that. He has gallery shows happening all around the world. And as we're literally leaving that gallery, we're like a couple streets away, there's a mural being painted in his style that has his name on it, and some other guy's painting the mural. And so like he literally he's at such a level where he's subcontracting people to paint his artwork elsewhere.
That's
and I don't know
weird.
how much his hands are involved in that process, but
Yeah.
I think it's easy to look at that and be like, oh man, screw that. Like he's not, you know, the guy out there doing it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's still enough of his initial passion and his drive that when someone does experience a new piece painted by someone who may not be him, maybe some of his early experiences transferred into your perception of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We just talked about that as like bringing in an editor. It's like the videos aren't the same as what we used to make, but he's helped freed up the time, and like he's developing his own skill, and it's like we can help mold the shape that he develops that skill in, but like I still get to touch the project. I still get to put the finaling. I get to focus on, instead of like, you know, you have a finite amount of energy, instead of spending, you know, 100% of my energy on 100% of the project, I can spend 100% of my energy on the last 20% that really matter. And like what he does still matters, but like that time's delegated so that I can work and have that 100% given to a bunch of individual projects. And it's like, it is different, but like, I mean, I'm still very grateful and like appreciative of that opportunity. And it's something we've been working towards, but you know, I'm sure maybe Obey, maybe he still gets that finalized touch. Maybe he still gets, maybe
I'm sure
the
he's
one
got
comes
to
up with all those
approve.
proofs.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially if you put
That's
your name
true.
on something, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
that's a discussion we've had many a time.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like apprenticeships, like the old style of like a master of a craft taking on someone younger and training them up to like be another master and work alongside them. And I think that's like important too, because like it's just a new person. They might have new ideas. Like I don't think art just should be stagnant, you know.
Oh, for
like
sure.
bringing in new people and like letting them do their own thing, I think is important. So I don't know, maybe that's kind of the wholesome idea that I kind of went to, is like, hey, maybe he's working with these people and like trying to bring them into this type of style, and he's allowing them to
that's
work
awesome.
side by side. But I don't know.
That's
No,
actually
that's a good
exactly. It's so funny you brought that up. When I talked to that artist who was painting the Obey mural in Miami, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, you know, I'm an artist too on the side. I do my own thing, but I took this apprenticeship." He literally said that.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
and he was like, "Yeah, it's really hard to paint these murals, but I've learned an insane amount from a master, and you know, hopefully one day I can transfer that into some of the stuff that I do on my own."
Yeah.
So it was really cool to hear that, and I actually respected him doing that way more. Hearing that,
Right. Just like you and Donna.
Yeah, right.
The masters taught the whole family.
Exactly. I was like, who's Donna for a second? I remember. Yeah, it was kind of funny. Like, I stopped taking art classes with her, like, probably middle school or something. But once I got back more into art, it was like my senior year of high school. I took classes with Donna again. It was my grandma
awesome.
and I. And even when I was in college, I'd go to Donna, and like, I wasn't painting, portraits or landscape paintings at the time. I was doing my abstract stuff, and like, Donna still was like down with it.
Yeah.
Which I thought was so cool.
That's
Because like,
awesome.
growing up, she was like, okay, well, we're going to put red on this flower and, paint the sky with the clouds to look like this. And I'm like, okay, so I'm doing these like hardline architectural abstraction pieces. And she's like, oh, okay. And like, she was like, well, I think if you go a little bit more gray with this hue, it's actually going to like, she was still speaking
That's awesome.
the artistic language, even though it's in a realm that's not even what she does.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Especially because you're impacting the way she views art differently now, and she's helping you still formulate yours at that point in your career. So, I mean, like you were saying, where you bring in somebody new and you start bouncing ideas back and forth, and they offer perspectives that you would have never given or never had, and that's
100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I find creators online that I follow. Adam Savage from Mythbusters.
Yeah, Mythbusters.
I watch his Tested channel, and he has a small studio still. I mean, I wouldn't call it small. But
I was
it's
like,
small because it's
small.
packed to the brim with stuff, and so it seems small. But he just has so much stuff in it. But he has other people that he works with, and I think it's only like a select few.
Yep.
But I think that's really inspirational for me because like he's a professional of his craft, and he's so passionate, and he's like leading these younger people up to like do what he does, and that's just like super cool. And there's a collaborative atmosphere. He's like talking about how he's working on like the Matrix sets and like working with Jamie, and how a huge part of Mythbusters was like working together and bouncing ideas off of each other.
I love that about that show.
Yeah.
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 That's what we're
It brings
hoping
to
do.
mind, yeah, definitely. It brings to mind this artist from Spain, Felipe Pontone is his name.
Okay.
But his last name is spelled like Pantone, like the Pantone
Yeah.
swatches. And like, he came from graffiti and painted some really cool graffiti, but eventually kind of evolved his graffiti stylings to be like large scale paintings, large scale murals. And now he does like massive, like, he kills it. He kills it. He's like one of the artists I aspire to even remotely be close to in terms of like the things I can accomplish and do. And like, he has basically a warehouse where he's got a team of, I don't know how many people he has, but they have like massive CNC cutters, like all kinds of laser cutters. They have a whole spray booth thing set up to where like, I don't know, just any picture they post from their studio, it's like he has like a studio manager, and like he's doing so much stuff on a scale where it's like, dang, dude. And the thing that I really like about what he's doing too is like, it's all grounded in abstraction. He's not like I could see the appeal of like a Shepard Fairey Obey piece. It's like, okay, it's a political figure, or it's, a person. I don't know, art that's like representative or representational.
Yeah.
It delivers faster to like not a very nuanced audience. They can see, okay, well, they painted a person. It looks like a person. The colors are nice. Thus, it is a good piece of art. Felipe Pontone is doing stuff that's like, it's not even a person. It's not even really anything. It's just like crazy zigzag lines and like these wild patterns. And he takes like old Windows like graphics where like, the X has like a beveled edge to it when you try to exit out of like a window, and he'll paint like beveled edges on like, like just look up his stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're
Felipe
have to look him
Pontone.
up.
Yeah, it's like
It's all dope. It's like he takes like nostalgic internet, like early internet influences, and like crams that into some like futuristic cyberpunk like realm.
It's like you got the Marvel movies, and it's like, yeah, everyone gets it. They're awesome technically, and they look pretty, and people love it. And then you have like the indie, something wild no one's ever seen before. This dude's like off on his own journey, making something crazy, and kind of, oh, dude, we're pulling up some of the art here.
Yeah, so
on
I pulled some
screen.
up because I was
he
like,
kills it.
dude.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And just seeing that that's possible, like you can, I don't know, as an artist, and I'm sure you guys as creators as well, like it's kind of weird being a creative in the current time, and I'm sure all artists throughout all time have probably felt similar, but like, dude, Michelangelo has already existed. Like, he mastered painting the human form a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then you have like the Renaissance paintings, and then like even some of the best abstract painters like Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, like all these major huge figures have pushed art to such a level where now you're just like, well,
Where do
I
you
guess
go?
I'm an artist, and what am I doing? You know? But I think they didn't really know what they were doing either, and probably felt similar. So like, you know, what's going to hit, what's going to take off, who really knows? But I think the thing that's the common thread with all that is like they just stuck with what they liked and kept doing it.
Well, that's a fun thing with art movements, especially in the past, because there's always that backlash to like that current status quo. What is it, like Impressionism, the Impressionist movement? I think Claude Monet was like one of the big people that I like studied because I just really liked his art. But it was kind of like I don't want to do like a super hyper realistic thing. Like I want to give like the general idea of it and put my own. Like maybe he just couldn't see very well, and that's just what it looked like. But
Later on in life, he actually like started to get cataracts, and like some of his like largest paintings he ever did, his eyesight was like really, really cruddy. Yeah.
But like I really liked his paintings. Like I don't have an example of it pulled up, but like that
The
was
water
kind
lily
of,
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so dope. I had a elementary school art teacher that was a huge Claude Monet fan, and Mr. Gaw was his name. He's the best. And like
Shout out.
It was so
Shout out.
cool. Speaking of like, you know, why I'm an artist today or how I got to what I'm doing, people like him and Donna are like the key figures. Like these people, if they didn't exist, like I would not be doing what I'm doing. Mr. Gall, like he knew I was colorblind, and so I would do like a landscape drawing or a painting with like pastel, and like I'd color the sky like purple and the grass like brown and red. Like the colors are totally not right, and I'd bring it to Mr. Gall, and he'd be like, "I love it." Like he
awesome.
wasn't the guy that'd be like, yeah, I mean, it's done pretty well, but the colors, like he would just be like, if that's the world that you perceive, I think it's so cool, and you need to share that with more people.
Yeah.
That's
like
awesome.
people like that. It's like, dude,
that's so cool because like was it on the Kanye album that just came out, he talks about like his second or third grade teacher who like realized he wasn't doing well in school, and she's like, you really like music, don't you? He's like, yeah. And the teacher was just like letting him make music and stuff.
That's dope.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's, you know, one of the more successful artists to be alive right now. And he still thinks back to this grade school teacher that said, I believe in you, have fun. It's like, that's what carries people along. I mean, I think everybody at some point, you know, has somebody, I would hope at some point in their life that like encourages them a little bit. And like, if you get that and you just run with it, you can do so much.
100%. And I think this is kind of a more nuanced discussion of like social media and stuff, but in terms of like people having FOMO or fear of missing out, or like it's just Instagram is such a rosy, well, it can be. It depends on like what type of stuff you look at. If you look at doom and gloom all day, you're going to get a lot of it.
Yeah,
But if you're...
gives you what you want.
Yeah, like I use Instagram as like a inspiration outlet to just kind of see cool stuff that people are doing, follow stuff like Felipe Pontone, and see like what crazy paintings him and his team are cooking up.
Yeah.
But like I recently did kind of an Instagram story highlight of the year, just posting, you know, different happenings or different things that I experienced this year. I tried to make a good note towards the end of like, the worst parts of the year don't get a highlight reel, dude. Like,
No.
The
No,
days
not
I
at all.
had where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. I'm not producing anything worthwhile. No one's buying anything. No one's hitting me up to do anything. Like none of those get highlight reels. So like, I just think it's important if people, I mean, I don't have much of a social media reach whatsoever, but like,
Wait, what?
I don't know.
Why are you here? Wait, who invited this guy?
Or just want to pack
Wait,
it up.
wait,
Yeah.
what about the views?
I'm just saying like it's important to like speak to, it's not all rosy and like super easy all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
And Instagram makes it look like it is. Like when
yeah.
you look at people's Instagram page, you're like, well, dude, they're balling and I'm failing, you know?
It's kind of true though.
It-
I was looking at your stuff and I was like, oh, this stuff is so tight. I was like, man, he must be making art every day.
No, dude, definitely not.
He makes so much money. Look at how much he charges for this piece.
I know.
I make so much money off paintings I haven't sold.
That's the life of an artist, man. What was the Flight of the Navigator? There's a Captain Disillusion. He makes all these like viral video reviews, and he breaks down the science behind or the VFX behind, depending on if it was real or fake. And he puts, a lot of effort in it. People like it, and they say, "We love you. You're such a great artist, and you should do your own thing." So he does this like 1 hour review of a movie that meant a lot to him as a child, that inspired him to do VFX, and he puts months of work into this.
No one gave a damn about it.
I got 1/10 of the views he would normally get on a video.
Oh no, that makes me sad. I didn't even look at the views. I liked that video.
I loved it too. But like, it just goes to show, it's like, and we're still struggling with this too, is as an artist, it's like finding the balance. What do you enjoy making? What do people want to see? And it's like, how much am I willing to compromise to meet in the middle? And how often am I going to take time just to say, screw it, I'm going to do what I want regardless of what anyone else says?
Dude, that's a life question.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Real.
Yeah.
And I struggle on a whole different level because I'm an analytical numbers guy and, run most of the marketing here. So it's like, well, what gets us clicks? Because
TikTok.
clicks, hey, it does.
You got us the most views on it too.
Yeah. Just some off the cuff thing. That's the other thing.
It's weird
You
how
just
stuff
don't know.
that you don't care about pops off.
Made me mad.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
It does.
It's weird.
It's
Well,
anger.
Freaking 5-second video, get 4,000 views, trumps everything we ever put out, and I'm like, this.
You
Yeah,
just
it's
hard
weird.
top me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like you just have to pray to like the algorithm gods to like grant you exposure, which I don't
care.
I don't like.
No, I get it. Or you just
I
can't.
don't know. I'd rather post something to like a dark corner of the internet that no one's ever going to see.
Yeah.
But I want that. That was kind of my approach to graffiti. Is like I want to paint something that's not super far out in the open. It's not just going to get seen by everybody. But I want someone who has to work to get there to see that and be like, dang, he went out here and painted this out here.
Like
Yeah.
the monoliths.
It's like-
do you remember that? The chromatic monoliths, but like people just put in the middle of nowhere, and then like
In
some
Utah?
guy everywhere. They put them all over the world.
Yeah,
there's
that
like
was
3 or
dope.
4.
That was tight.
So there's just like these monoliths that just exist, and you're on a hike in the middle of nowhere, and you find this thing. You're like, aliens.
Yeah, right. That's it.
Who else? Who in their
would
right
do that?
mind would come out in the middle of nowhere with a 900 plus pound? I think they're like 15-foot monoliths.
Those are big.
Dig a hole, put it 8 feet under, and still have it sticking up. And it's like nobody would do that in their right mind. And it's like some artist,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's sick.
some artist had a vision, and you found it in the dark corner of the
I
world.
love that.
Yeah.
And it makes the people who do find it feel special. They're like, yo, what? I just discovered this crazy
Yeah.
thing. I mean, there's nothing more thrilling than like a discovery and finding something new and be like, well, like, dude, even finding a new band or a new
Yes.
song, you're like, dude, what? Well, I've been waiting for this specific sound. I couldn't articulate what I've been looking for, but it's kind of like this band, but also has a little of this influence. Because I like those 3 bands, but like you never would have assumed, oh, well, I guess a band may exist one day that is those things.
Yeah.
And then you find them, you're
Yeah.
like, well, this is what I've been eating all
And
the
then
time.
you find out they haven't made music in 8 years, and you're like, well, I want more.
Right.
I want more.
Yeah, some of my favorite bands,
number
like
5.
they're not big at all. They're just like some dude with a freaking 8-string guitar in like Moldova, just like writing filth. Puts
Yes.
an album out, and you're like, this doesn't even sound real.
Dude, you find a Spotify song with 10K plays, and you're like, this is what I
bangs.
want.
Yeah.
This is what I needed.
100%.
So I've got to ask the question just because I know we were just discussing it. So like, how do you find that balance though? Because I know it's really just you who's kind of running your business. So how do you find that balance between being an artist and still trying to run a business and make a living, because I know you were talking about like, I want to put something out there that's found in the dark corner, but there is that balance,
It
right?
needs to appeal to pay the bills.
Correct. And that's
Yeah.
right. And so that's how do you approach that and like,
Yeah, it's like, how do you sell your work but not sell your soul kind
Yeah.
of thing.
yeah, right.
I mean, I worked in advertising out of school
Okay.
for like 3 or 4 years, and it just kind of like it bummed me out.
It does.
Like,
I get-
I mean, it was cool. I learned a lot, and like some of the people I worked with were super duper driven and like really cared about what they were doing, which was cool to see in a field like that. But I just wasn't getting the creative like satisfaction. I just felt like I was like just regurgitating stuff that like was on Dribbble. You know what Dribbble is? It's
I do not.
A graphic designer, people who do graphic design work just it's like a and
like
basically people just copy stuff from Dribbble all the time.
I gotcha.
You're right. And like, so when I was doing that, my soul was just kind of getting crushed. I wasn't feeling like I was producing anything that was worthwhile, because I'm thinking about things like we spoke about before. Okay, we're artists in the modern era. Is this all I'm here for, is to just make Instagram ads for like corporate companies I don't care about?
Yeah.
No, that's not why I'm here.
Right.
I have other things to say, and I just have to find a way to get my message to certain people. And so a lot of my business today is like outreach and just trying to like reach clients that could fund a piece of artwork. And it was really hard initially because like my city doesn't have a very, how do I say it nicely?
It's okay. I've heard this a million times.
There's a preference towards very safe art, that is representative of a certain, it's hard to say this nicely.
Vision.
Basically, where the funds are coming from for certain art projects in the city are geared towards pushing a certain narrative of, I'm really struggling with how to say this. Long story short, a lot of murals that are easily funded and more easily recognizable for a community to embrace very quickly are, they're kind of like a Happy Meal type of an art project where it's a picture of a person.
Yeah.
There's some flowers. There's bright colors. Some of the colors don't really mesh together very well, but it's yellow and purple and pink and
That's a hot take.
It's stuff that like is going to easily be like, oh, that is good art.
Yeah.
And some of the stakeholders at hand to approve and move some of those projects along are kind of like, they're looking for art that satisfies their vision and their goal, which is cool.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Right.
But those aren't really the jobs that I'm kind of after. And I've spent forever applying for open calls and, hey, we're needing a mural, yada, 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 send your designs, yada, yada. And like, I never get any of them because it's not really the right audience for what I'm trying to do. So a lot of what I'm doing is actually just trying to, I don't want my art to like steal the show. Like some murals are, you drive by and you're like, wow, that's a huge, amazing lion or something. And it's so cool that they painted that lion. And, oh, it's shocking. I want my murals to just mesh with the city in a way that you don't even really know it's there almost.
Yeah.
Like you drive by and it's just a part of the fabric of the city.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a nod to my graphic design past because the best graphic design, you don't notice. It's just exactly how it should be. The best, UI experience for an iPhone, stuff just happens the way you think it should happen. You slide your hand to the left, the icon pops up just how you're expecting. You click it, you move on.
You don't have to think about it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I do want my art to be thought about, but I also want that sense of discovery, where you're in the fabric of the city and you see something and you're like, whoa, that's been there? Like who, why is this here? How long have I parked next to this mural and not even really noticed that it's here?
Yeah, it gives me like a stop and smell the flowers type of like, if you take the time to be like intentional, like, holy crap, whoa.
Oh, it's
100%.
It's like the one here in Columbus on 6th Street.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually going to ask.
I was like walking by and I was like, has this always been here? And then I looked down and I saw your name on it and I was like, shoot, I know that dude.
Right?
And then I was like,
world.
how did I not notice this was his piece anyways? Because I've followed you for a long time and I've always really liked your aesthetic and it's very specific to you. So I was like, dang it.
I missed it.
Yeah, but it did the job, right?
It was getting painted outside my window because I live right over that street
nice.
and I just see, a bunch of people out there helping. They painted the whole building white, so you have this huge blank canvas, and then they start painting the street, and then I saw lifts going up, and you were up there for a while, and you're talking about how these projects, am I selling my soul or am I selling art type of thing? And you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, but on that scale, where do you feel like this huge, probably 60 foot by 100 foot mural, where does that fall for you? Like, is that something that you feel like really conveyed your artistry, or is that something a little further away?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I have worked intentionally very, very hard to ensure that the creative shackles are not thrusted upon me when I take on projects.
Yep.
So if I'm taking on a task and they're like, well, it needs to be these colors, and I'm like, well, these colors are going to look like doo-doo. They're not going to look good. So
you know what you're talking about.
We also need to incorporate, we need a whole jungle scene with 30 animals. I'm going to be like, well, do you have a bazillion dollars? Because it's going to take eternity to do that. So it's always like a fine balance of like how far you're willing to push it. But I think it's super duper. I mean, it just melts my heart when there's a client that's like, we've seen the stuff that you do, we love what you do, and we just want like more of that.
Is that
we understand that?
Yeah, and that's a great feeling.
It hasn't come easy to have that happen, and it's only happened like a handful of times, but. Yeah, my early murals weren't the stuff I'm doing now. I mean, I painted a lot of stuff I did not want to paint. And I had to like learn how to deal with that, learn how to paint things. And like, there's a good learning curve with that too. Like you learn a lot of practical things that you can implement once you do your own stuff. But I don't know anymore. I've tried to really be intentional about what type of stuff I can actually take on. And so that's kind of helped, I would say.
That's awesome.
But I mean, anybody who was close to me when I was working at my ad agency job, they knew, like, when I would have off time from that job, I would be doing design mock-ups and mural mock-ups of, like, stuff that I actually did want to do. And so the whole time I was working there, I was like, dude, if I could just do murals like this that I want to do, I'd be so happy. Like, even if I could just do one.
Yeah.
If I could just do one mural like that, I'll move on with my life. I'll still work in design. I just want to do one because it's festering in my mind, and I just have to do one of them and just see that I can do it. It was just like a personal task of like, let's just see if we can make this happen. So when I got let go of my design job, I was like, well, I've been telling everybody around me that
There's your sign.
If I wasn't in my graphic design job, I'd love to do this. And so all of a sudden I'm like staring down the barrel of the gun like, well, time is now. Let's make this happen. So
Nice.
Emails went out, mock-ups went out. A lot of the stuff, that was probably the hardest thing towards getting any murals at all, was actually getting people to like agree to pay for some of the things that I'd done, because I hadn't done any of them. I have all these ideas of, it'd be cool to do this mural, but it's like, all right, well, what murals have you done, dude? And it's like, nothing.
Yeah.
I work for a graphic design company,
I
but
painted under New York Street or whatever.
yeah,
it
they're gonna
was.
be like, sick, dude, bye.
Yeah.
And so using mock-ups was huge, and just trying to show somebody like, hey, this is what could be. And that's one of the really special lessons, and a lot of skateboarders have the same experience too, where when you're interfacing with the city, and same with urban explorer people, and you're interfacing with like standard reality in a way that like you go into some sort of niche experience, whether it's exploring, skateboarding, painting graffiti, and you go down kind of that subculture rabbit hole, and what you end up finding is you can't look at the city the same way ever again.
Yeah.
It's like once I started painting graffiti, all of a sudden my hometown looks different. Oh, that wall. Oh, that bridge up there, like that would be so sick. Or, oh, this bridge actually is really high off the railroad tracks. I bet there's good walls underneath this bridge. Then you explore the bridge. Oh, there's great walls down here. Or skateboarders, they'll just drive past a library, and it's not just a library to them. It's like, oh, that's a library, cool. But that rail that's by that stairwell is butter. I'd love to skate that rail. Or like urban explorers are like, oh, well, there's this new apartment complex over here being built. They have a massive crane. Let's climb that. Like it's your way to interact with the world at a different speed and a different perception than others that I think is super duper cool.
So is that what you did with the mural in Columbus? Did you saw like they're looking for art to go up and you put in a bid, you show your idea and they loved it, or was that a different process?
Good question. So there's Daniel and Lulu that are co-partners of Law Office, LAA office. They're like an architecture, I don't know if they're an architecture firm. Maybe that's what you would call them. But they're like a public art and architecture ambassador here in Columbus. And so they moved here from New York City, and they've been working on all kinds of cool public art opportunities and things. And like, I think Salem is a town that's kind of near here. Does that sound familiar? North Salem?
It does sound familiar.
I
know it exists.
They did some cool mural project there. And like, I think they basically were like starting to do these really cool public art projects with different community members here in the city. And since they have an architectural background, their murals already that they've painted and worked with teams to do, they're kind of in a weird similar vein to the stuff I do, but we never knew each other. And so like Law Office was discussing with Columbus, hey, we have the 6th Street wall that we'd love a mural on, yada, yada, yada. They'd done some geometric abstract stuff before. And I think they had just come across my work via Instagram or maybe word of mouth. And then it really just became like, hey, we kind of do sort of similar stuff. And we have this project that's kind of going on doing this ground mural, but we think it'd be really cool to get you involved to do like the wall mural that's next to it. And so the ground and the wall mural will kind of like seamlessly work together.
Okay.
And so that's really how the project came about. It was basically them saying,
we're busy.
Yeah, we're busy. We like what you're doing. We'd love to join efforts and try to show Columbus, which is such an architecturally special place. Like, dude, people road trip here just to look at buildings.
Oh, yeah.
That's sick. And so, like, me being somebody who tries to paint murals and artwork inspired by architecture, I was like, man, what an honor to even be able to, like, try to speak an architectural language here on a mural. You know, back in my city, there's a lot of cool architecture, too, but I don't think architecture is the identity of the city.
Yeah.
You know, it's more of the Colts and like,
Yeah.
which is cool. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, losing is really neat.
right, yeah.
They're doing great this year. They might make it to
They're
the
trying.
playoffs. Who
They're
knows?
trying their damnedest. But yeah, it was an honor to do that mural here for Columbus, and it was also a really cool thing that the community was like down with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like me painting my style up in my city, like people are like, so what's this gonna be? That's the question I was just like
when it's done.
yeah, they're like, so what? How much longer you got on this?
You're like, it's
there's-
done.
It's done. Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm 2 days away. I'm pretty close. And they're like, really? You know, stuff like that.
What's the subject? It's
Yeah.
a bunch of shapes.
So are you painting like a person on here? Like, where's the flowers?
Yeah.
Or where's the nature element? I'm like,
Where's
"Damn,
the wings
dude."
for the Instagram girl to stand in front
Oh
of?
my God, dude. On public record, I've turned those down. So there's my integrity.
If you could do it with some geometric shapes, it'd still turn out pretty sick.
I wouldn't do it.
You would?
Just
do
two
it.
triangles.
No, I would not.
Dude,
I wouldn't do it.
$18,000. I will paint 2 large triangles.
For the angel wings.
They would have to be abstracted to the point where like they wouldn't have to read as like
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You'd have to be told those are butterfly wings.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's cool, man.
I couldn't push myself
On
to
the
do
record.
it. I've
I
had
mean,
people
I
hit me
respect
up and
that.
ask to
I
do 'em.
respect that.
There are jobs, I think every artist, us included, that as much money as
can't.
somebody offers, it's like, I'm good, man. That's not what we do. We'll stay in our lane.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
for you, butterfly wings are out.
Yeah.
I mean, depending upon the amount, we might have to.
Producer man.
And maybe
Oh,
it
my
depends on how my month is going.
I know, right?
But
Yeah. Oh man, that
Yeah.
snow's really piling up in here.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Just depends how high the snow goes.
Yeah, and maybe that's to my detriment. I mean, dude, if I painted butterfly wings, I could probably make a killing. But at the same time,
Nah.
the way I look
Yeah.
at it too is like the first person to do the butterfly wings, like sick. That's cool that you came up with
Yep.
it. It's a cool concept. It's just been beaten down to the
Yeah.
point where like
Oh, yeah.
it's so common, which is cool. It's a testament to its success. But I don't know. I'm trying to paint stuff that's not like hip right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to paint stuff that like 5 years from now. Because like some of the murals that I've been inspired by, like dude, there's this mural in Indy that's off, I believe, Delaware Street. It's near where the bus station is downtown. Mm-hmm. And dude, it's this mural from 1973, painted by this guy Roland Hobart. I guess the city at the time, like people were leaving downtown Indy. They're like leaving to the suburbs. Not a lot of people work downtown, but they're like, yeah, we don't want to live down here. It's kind of sketchy and sad and gray. And so the city put together a mural project of like, yo, let's put some money into this and try to get some big public art funded. And so this guy and a few other people, I think one of them was an architect, they painted, I can't remember how many murals they did, maybe 4 or 5 or something.
Okay.
But like huge walls right downtown Indy. And this Roland Hobart dude, I think he was from Europe originally and somehow ended up in Indianapolis, like everyone who's in Indianapolis, for like, how did we get here and why are we here still? But he had some like European design and Swiss design influence. And so when he was putting together some mural concept designs, he was also designing it in a way that like assistants could help him paint the mural. And so on crazy 1970s scaffolding and lifts or whatever the heck they were using,
Right.
him and a bunch of high schoolers painted this full-on banger right downtown Indy. That is so dope. And like if you look up old pictures, like you just type in Roland Hobart Indianapolis mural, there's like old photos of it back when the colors were still vibrant.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's been 40 plus years.
Yeah. Whew.
And the colors are really beaten. I mean, it's really become like almost pastel in color. But just seeing
Can you
that.
put those in the chat, David?
Yeah, is it like a lot of half circles?
Yeah, it's like half circles and triangles with some
Yeah.
oranges. And
David
like,
isn't impressed.
What?
He's like, is it a bunch of half circles?
Is it?
What is
No, no,
this?
Is it
I
this
wanted to
thing?
make sure I got the right one.
Is this one finished?
Yeah, is that finished? No, I like it.
I'm sure somebody
I'm
asked.
just
him.
messing with you, man.
But yeah, it's just crazy that like that could be painted in our city. It's just a massive abstract
I
thing.
love abstract art, man.
And
do
Look
too.
at me.
That's why we work here.
even just driving past
All
that thing,
abstract.
driving past that thing even to this day, like it's crazy that some dude in the 70s painted that.
Man, that's so funny that I don't even know if I've
That's-
seen it.
That's really tight.
Do you have the original on there?
Dude, that is some 70s colors, though.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, there's a Facebook.
Yeah, there it is.
That's tight.
There's a Facebook movement to restore the urban wall.
Hey.
Yep. Yeah, I've been in talks with some of those people too. And
Dude,
that's something that the city,
How
like,
tight would that be?
dude, it'd be sick.
That'd be amazing.
And if they're looking for a guy to help do it, I've painted some pretty big triangles, so I think I can help out.
Well, that's what
There
I'm
you
saying.
go.
Like, if like as an artist, it's
Could
like
shift to
one
half
thing to like
circles.
pay homage, and you're like, oh, this is where this style came from, and this is why I do it this way, and I really look up to this artist. And then like, hey, we need you to restore the artist that you really like, and it's like that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be a real honor for sure. And I think he's still alive. He's like 98 or something.
Oh, nice.
Dude, yeah, go up with him, be the high schooler.
Yeah, that'd be tight. Shout out Richard from Columbus. He's on the Exhibit Columbus staff, I think.
Yeah.
Richard McCoy.
Yeah, Richard McCoy. He's the dude. He's super in the know of like classic art in the city and architecture. So
Okay.
I think he's one of the guys helping lead that project.
Yeah, I believe he used to. Didn't he? He worked at like I think the museum or something like that.
I'm sure.
He was like an art director, so
Like a curator or something?
Yeah, he was whatever role he was in had to do with art and being high up and like figuring out like what looked good and whether that was historical or something like that. And that's another one we would love to have a chat with.
Yeah,
again.
dude.
He's
I'd
a
love to
smart
pick that
guy.
dude's brain too. Yeah, his Instagram, he has like old classic photos of just like wild churches and like architectural buildings. Like even your guys' church, the North Christian Church out here, I think is what it's called. The one that looks like just some freaking alien UFO.
Oh,
Yeah,
Steeple,
yeah.
the,
Bro,
like
that thing is
the
sick.
thumbtack type thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Like my grandpa actually, I think he helped build that. He was in construction. Like he wasn't the artist by any means, but he was doing construction. He worked on a lot of the buildings in Columbus that are like
Wild.
the people that come and drive from all over the world,
Yeah.
or fly from all over the world to come look at it. It's like, yeah, I worked on that, and then we renovated it, and I took out half the lights, and I put them in my house because they didn't need them. And it's like that's pretty tight.
wild. Yeah.
It's been fun to use the architecture here as well in some of our projects. You know,
I'm
we've
sure.
tried to kind of play to that a little bit. One of the projects we did towards the end of last year, we worked with Exhibit and Dance Kaleidoscope and did they did like a 3-piece dance routine. It was super cool. This was the second year we've done it. And this year we incorporated like 2 extra angles, and one of those was the drone. And we used a lot of kind of like the architecture to pan and move and use for like wipe cuts and things to play to it. And it was a whole other view as well of some of the things that are here, the art installations, to be able to see them from that direct top-down view.
Definitely.
That was just fun because it's like I was the operator that day, so I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, oh wow, I haven't seen this. What is this? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll use this to our benefit. So there's like so many of those here. So it is a cool spot for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It was definitely painting that mural was the first time I've been in Columbus for like a longer duration of time.
Yeah.
It was neat to kind of interface with the city and see it in a different way that, usually I just kind of drive through it or,
I get it. I was the
Go to a
same way.
restaurant.
Yeah.
This is broadened my horizons by being
Heck yeah.
here with these guys. So
That's what it's
I
all
knew
about.
nothing about this.
Best podcasts in the best town.
Heck yeah.
Hey, heck yeah.
Yeah.
You guys want to do some would you rather's before we wrap up?
Wrap it on up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. First one. Let's see. Would you rather be lost in the woods? What does that mean? Lost in the woods of a mountain for a year, or stranded on a tropical island for a year?
Woods, for sure. Mountains
Yeah.
are tight.
I'll live in the mountains.
Beaches are cool, but I don't know. I've been to like Florida too many times.
Having all the Midwesterners.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of Florida and beached out.
Yeah.
You're not worried about the things that could be in the mountains, like the animals and stuff, eh?
That's better than Florida man.
Florida man.
Committing all of them crimes.
Oh,
Yeah, bears are not cool. Well, I guess it depends on where the mountains are at.
Yeah.
Well, true.
Most mountains
So
have
most-
bears.
Pick your mountains, man. What
Most mountains.
you want?
Appalachian.
mountains?
Pick your mountains.
Probably the Grand Tetons. Those are pretty
Oh,
dope.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I took
Wow.
Dude, David's all about
David
it,
likes
man.
mountains.
Or
Is that your
Yeah,
pick?
Or
that's
Banff.
my pick. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
or go to British Columbia, Banff National Park
Oh,
up
yeah.
there in
No,
Canada.
that
I
I
almost
get.
went there this past summer.
I wanna go.
Heck yeah.
Just
I was
couldn't
there
do
this
it.
summer.
Yep.
Yep, there in the Tetons. But it was the wildfires were like really bad, so I couldn't even really see the Teton Mountains. It was kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Mountains. And
Mountains.
David, you said your mountains?
Yeah, you guys-
I do mountains. I mean, I've been to the Tetons. They're
Yeah.
beautiful. I've been to Yosemite, Yellowstone. That's my favorite biome. I don't know.
Yeah, makes sense.
We've been playing
It's
Minecraft.
beautiful.
Tristan?
Yeah, Minecraft invented the word biome.
Biomes never existed before.
Nope, it's a new word.
Yeah, so you guys can be neighbors up in the mountains. I'm gonna go enjoy summer warm because I
I
don't
knew
know
it.
of any cold. All the mountains I know of are cold. I don't know any
I
warm
love cold.
mountains.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that.
I love winter. I
I'm
paint in my
freezing.
studio in the cold, so I'm down.
Yeah, right. You're like, I'm good.
Let's go.
Dude, I'm freezing right
conditioned.
now, so I'm happy to be on a island somewhere as long as I can eat something. I'm good.
There you go.
Yeah,
I'll be eating elk.
Oh, dude, ship it to me. I'm staying on the island.
Sick.
Yep.
You ship me fish, I'll ship you elk.
yeah, there you go.
Right back.
I'm probably going to split the room. I'm probably on the island as well. I mean,
Yeah.
after watching Castaway and stuff, he lasted a long time.
Yeah,
He did.
I don't know if I'd last as long.
dude.
I think if I liked seafood better, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
I
a big
dig
seafood
seafood,
guy,
so I'd be like, let's roll. If
Yeah.
I had to eat a raw fish, I could do it. I've done it.
I mean, sushi. It was like, well, it's a problem.
Right? I know. Fresh.
Say
Fresh.
Okay. Next one. Would you rather? I thought this would be interesting. Would you rather have infrared vision that you can turn on and off at will, or 20 times normal telescopic vision?
Wait, permanently? Is that
Permanently,
on?
yes.
Oh,
One you can turn on and off.
Yeah.
So you can turn your infrared on and off.
that's such a
at
good
will,
question.
Or 20 time normal telescopic.
Dude, you like lightly turn your head and just like,
Just see the pores on somebody, because 20 times is.
Wait, is it fixed or can you just zoom in at whim?
I feel like you should be able to zoom
Yeah,
in. If
is
the
it-
other one can turn
Yeah,
on and
normal or
off.
only
That's fine.
And
20
same with the
times?
ultraviolet.
You
Each
just
one
zoom
are
in.
on and off, yeah.
You just get
Or
to
infrared or
Infrared.
ultraviolet? Infrared.
Yeah.
So each one you can turn off and activate whenever you need.
Yeah.
I think infrared would be tight. Because first of all, I've got some color knowledge. There's
Yeah.
some color perception issues that I need to make up for. So if I can see in another visual
Just flip it on.
wavelength, I'm down. Yeah.
That'd be tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of I think they're not cuttlefish, but they're shrimp crab, I think is what they're called.
Oh.
Dude, they're like these wild little crabfish guys that are like sort of shrimp like.
Okay.
And they have the widest breadth of the visual spectrum of perception of any other animal on Earth.
the mantis
they can
shrimp?
Mantis shrimp.
mantis shrimp. Yeah, that's
they
what
got,
it is.
Yeah, it's like 10 million more colors. Just kidding. It's like 5,000.
Still, could you
Slightly less
imagine?
That's crazy though.
Yeah.
Now, what's the coverage on the sRGB? No.
Yeah. We're going to have to start making some new mantis shrimp monitors.
Yeah.
Should be tight.
David?
So the 20 times, it's not like I can go in between. It's only 20 times.
Oh, it's
or only
0
normal?
or 20.
Oh, really?
On
Well,
and
then
off.
definitely.
On and off.
Yep, on and off.
Yeah. I feel like
So basically, a Halo 3 sniper rifle.
Yeah.
Right?
It's either
I was going to ask you. You named one of your art pieces Halo, and I was like,
Halo's a huge influence of mine.
that's awesome,
the Halo Mountains is where he's going to live.
dude. I mean, it's all coming together. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Halo 3 a bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Halo 3 was my guess.
Have you played
best.
the new one?
Infinite?
Yeah.
Heck yes.
Yeah.
Super
Totally
jank. I love
Yeah.
it.
It's kind of it's kind
You
of broken
uninstalled it,
currently.
Tristan.
Jank.
Yeah.
Yeah, those Halo games were like a huge influence on me architecturally too, because
Oh
like
yeah.
like the Valhalla map. I don't know if you
Yes.
remember that one, but like
Those
on each side of the
structures.
map, there's some huge like monolithic, just
Yeah.
crazy
Like the
architecture.
Forerunner, like
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
Forerunner
He's-
architecture is
He's
fire.
living in like
did.
early 2000s polygon world. They're like, yeah, we're limited by the amount of polygons we can design, and you're like, I like it.
Looks good.
That's my style.
Master Chief 20 polygons at building 4.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey,
Yeah.
it still almost gets me every time you did the mock-up on the pyramids on the north side. And I'm always like...
It's a dream, dude.
I was like, oh man, did he do that? And I'm like, wait a second.
I wish.
It says
man.
mock-up.
I would love to do that.
Those
It'd
buildings
be
are tight.
a very expensive,
Oh,
scary, and stressful job, but if it could be pulled off, it'd be pretty wild, dude.
That'd be tight.
Have you seen? I don't know where we're at on time, but I'll just briefly tell you. In Toledo, Ohio, the largest mural in the whole U.S. is like nearing completion. They painted these massive grain silos that are alongside the river in Toledo.
Okay.
Granted, it's like sunflowers and like portraits, which isn't really my thing, but dude,
What?
no way. It's not really what I do, but I still have tremendous respect for the fact that they're doing it so big. They're
Yeah.
painting indigenous, like native folks to the area too, which is
Oh, yeah.
really cool.
Okay.
I thought that was a nice touch because here in the States, we don't really have. I mean, dude, we live in Indiana, and like, there's really no connection with the native population
Yeah.
that,
Is that
that
where
used
it
to
comes
be
from?
here. Yeah.
Indiana. Oh my god.
I don't know. Don't we
Yeah,
have
then
a,
meanwhile,
don't we
it's
have a
like-
baseball team or something?
Yeah. So that's super. It's something I think we could definitely get more in touch with.
Yeah.
And Richard McCoy actually, as we were talking about him earlier, he's very in touch with some of the like different monuments and architectural pieces that actually pay homage to some of the previous native populations here in Indiana. So that stuff's super interesting. If you do pick his brain, ask about some of that. I'm sure he'd tell you some stuff that you're like, I had no idea.
That'd be tight.
Yeah.
Infrared 20 times. Come on.
I'll do 20 times.
Okay.
As long as I can focus, like I can do 20 times and it's like perfectly
Oh, yeah.
It's
focused.
20 times, but it's never in focus.
It's so aggravating.
Infrared, but it only shows the cold spots.
Oh no.
I don't know, man. Like this one, just I'm not drawn to it. So let's do 20 times. I don't know what I'd even use infrared for.
I do
Nighttime.
infrared. Because that would help you see at night.
I mean, you could be the predator.
That'd be
so-
tight. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I just like turn it on.
So you can see
So if
the warm
aliens show up,
spots.
you have an advantage.
Yep.
The warm spots in their house. Like I'm really cold. I'm gonna go over there. Like that's all I would use it for.
Dude, speaking of infrared, have you heard of Earl Sweatshirt? He's like a rapper.
Yeah.
Dude, there's this Earl Sweatshirt Grief is a music video that he did.
Okay.
Where the whole video is shot in infrared, but then they like black and whited the filter. So,
Okay.
Dude, it's crazy. It's such a cool, like, artistic music video.
Tristan loves music videos. We have a whole
Yeah.
thing on
Watch
our
that one.
internal
It's-
chat
it's
that's just
trippy.
like music video links that we think
had
are
to
cool.
make him his own chat.
Yeah.
To
He
just
just
talk
talks
about
to
music
himself.
videos. Yeah.
Yeah, look that one up. It's pretty
What's
cool.
the name of it?
Earl Sweatshirt Grief.
Grief. Okay.
And like there's a part where he like takes a drag off his cigarette and like you can see like the warmth from just like the cigarette kind of like fade over his mouth.
that's
and stuff.
tight.
It's weird. And then like there's a clip of like a snake entering water, but it's in infrared. So like, I don't know. It just looks, it's pretty interesting visually, I guess.
That's a cool.
That's like if you use an infrared camera and stuff with when you go to use face unlock on an iPhone, you can see because it actually projects a dot matrix onto your face, and that's how it measures the depth with the camera. And you can actually, if you look for pictures of it, you can see this like
crazy,
like all of these dots on your face. That's mapping your face.
Yep.
It's tight.
That's super cool. There's this artist I follow on Instagram who he's making artificial intelligence like generative artwork. And so like one of the things that he's really playing around with is like different Google and AI automation things that like, man, I'm totally butchering explaining this. It's way above my pay grade. But essentially like your phones and stuff now, when you send it a picture of, let's say, a mountain, it'll tell you mountain.
Yeah.
Or like it's trying to like depict what you're showing it and you know, assign a certain item list to what you're showing it.
Yep.
And so he created this generative process that like takes, he basically hooks the neural network up to compose and feast on a bunch of images of different data. And then he gives it like 2 different brushes. Do you know what Procreate is? It's like a drawing app on the iPad.
Yeah.
I think he uses Procreate. I could be wrong. But I think he gives it a certain brush and a certain color parameter. And then the AI unit then draws like cat, for instance. But it does it only using one brush and like one other color. So it draws like a real rough sketch of what the neural network thinks a cat is. But what's really weird is he can show that image of a couple squiggles in one color to other neural networks, and they all identify that as a cat.
That's a cat.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird, dude. So like he's trying to get it to like draw in its perception, kind of.
Oh.
It's really wild, but some of them are really cool. There's like
Tight.
There's a killer whale that he did that's like it's black and white with just like, I don't know. It's just super cool.
Yeah.
I can't for the life of me remember the dude's name, but if you look up
I would love to see
AI
that.
artwork, check some of it out. It's
Yeah. We've talked a lot about how AI can play in, so
Yeah.
I totally think we're gonna have to do another episode with you.
Yeah.
I have like 80 more things I
agree.
want to talk to you
I'm down.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about halfway through.
I know. It's like shoot. I think we'll just go ahead and
Wrap it up.
wrap it up.
that
So
it?
What
Call it
up?
quits.
All right.
Yeah, that's true.
How can people find you, Nick?
Good question. On the dark void of the internet.
Yeah, right.
you have to have
look
the
up-
dark net.
No, I'm not on the dark web.
no. Wrong
Don't
place.
go to that.
Too dark.
If you just type in Nick Abstract, most stuff should come up. Nick Abstract on Instagram, Facebook, I guess TikTok. I don't do anything on there.
Dude, that's the
but
Your
butter-
website
That's the
is-
butterfly wings of social media.
yeah,
TikTok.
TikTok.
Hey,
We're going to
Who
just
knows,
use
man?
that
it's
as our
gonna rocket ship
internal
us
term.
into the.
Yeah.
TikTok's gonna be the thing that tips us into the fame.
So he's taking commissions, and you come check him out. Go check out his website. He's got a lot of really cool pieces. Some
it.
mock-ups.
He's got stuff for sale.
He's got some stuff for sale.
It's tight.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did a whole 10-piece painting series inspired by the planets in our solar system. So there's a Earth canvas, a Saturn canvas that's called Halo.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time doing those. I painted in like 20 degrees in my studio and painstakingly, poured my heart and soul into those. So I think they're really cool, and anybody who picks them up would be stoked to have them.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
They're
Seriously,
shippable
though.
worldwide too for like a really good cost.
There you go.
I have them in like a canvas roll that essentially I can ship them anywhere in the world for like really, really cheap.
Yeah.
So
Don't claim to be an art enthusiast until you own a piece of abstract.
yeah, what's up? Come get it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not genuine. You need the abstract in your life.
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me on. It's super fun
absolutely.
getting to know you guys more.
Yeah,
And
dude,
It was
thanks for
crazy. We
coming.
just ran into one another at the
I
the
know.
art walk there.
Yeah.
It's like, I know that guy.
I know him.
He was like, I want to go home and see my wife. I was like, come on, man. Come down. Come check out
I
this art
know.
wall. It's pretty sick. There's going to be a lot of people there.
And that's when he found that who it was.
Yeah.
Well, I had seen it
You saw
earlier.
the name on there, but like we didn't know you would be there.
It's true though.
So it worked out really well, and I'm glad we've been able to make that connection. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for checking out this. I know it's a long one, but I swear this was probably one of the best ones we've had. It's a great guest, and it was a great time. Cole, where can people find the things?
TRIFLIX Cast on YouTube, TRIFLIX Cast on Instagram. Also, if you want to see our client work and some of our other fun stuff, at TRIFLIX LLC on Instagram. And if you want to find us on our website, it is triflix.com. If you want to hire us, because we do work.
Yeah.
We're all in this to make a little bit of money. So
yeah, and if you think you know somebody pretty cool that maybe do art, send them our way. We'd love to have them on.
Maybe you are cool.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, guys. You know what time it is?
Bye.
It's time to have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.